Well, it's no surprise, is it? If you recall the video I made a couple of months ago about the 5.2.2 changes, I said specifically that people would gravitate towards SMGs and high rate of fire weapons as well as high damage output weapons like SLR rifles. And, well, here we are. And quite frankly, Battlefield 5 is a bit of a hot mess right now, and I think you guys have seen a lot of other shooter content on the channel. And part of that's just because A, it's boring playing just one game, and B, just because I've kind of been avoiding Battlefield 5 if I'm being honest. It's not in the best of states right now, and it's just not in an enjoyable state, I think it's safe to say, and part of that is just down to the existence of the Type 2A, but a lot of that is down to the fact that the meta changes that have been introduced in 5.2.2 with the CTK change, kind of fell exactly where I thought they would fall, and because of that I've just sort of been gravitating away from it. So let's break this all down. Now, first and foremost, I think it's worth just saying this, the Type 2A shouldn't exist. In fact, it just doesn't make sense, We supposedly had all these time to kill changes, all these weapon changes to introduce some form of balance into the game that made sense, and I understood that. I felt like damage over range was something that needed to be understood better. And then lo and behold, the developers just introduce something which is broken. It doesn't work. It shouldn't be in the game. Nothing with that higher rate of fire weapon, not to mention the fact that you can slap an extended magazine on this thing, should remotely exist in Battlefield 5. I think the vast majority of times in fact, the majority of this gameplay is in a tank because I had to avoid the Type 2A. There was no way around it. And, it's borderline frustrating. It's frustrating when you have to question decisions like this, because surely somebody would have said that's a bad idea, that's nonsense. Battlefield specifically came out and said that the majority of engagements, so to speak, happened within 15 meters or so. Now, if that's the case, why would you introduce a 1028 RPM weapon at base? That just doesn't make any sense, because that is a 15 meters or so weapon. It has hardly any recoil and completely decimates people. So if the vast majority of engagements are at 15 meters, then why would I, the individual player, use anything but the Type 2A? And honestly, you can see in the game, if you don't have the Type 2A because you didn't unlock it, or you didn't buy it off the store, or haven't realized that you can now buy it off the store in the armory, what you should realize now is that you're probably using a Suomi or a Thompson to try and compensate, and you can see it throughout the entire game. People are using snipers, people are using SLRs, or people are just trying to get the highest rate of fire weapon possible, because they're just being completely rinsed by this thing over and over again. And it's a real statistical mess here. I don't understand why you would introduce such a gun when all of your statistics are saying, here are the engagement ranges, here's how we're trying to balance things over range. Well, it's like, okay, but it's all well and good balancing things at 20 meters and beyond, but if 20 meters and before that is a complete mess, then it makes no sense. Again, a lot of this is just frustration. I liked Battlefield 5 when it originally came out a lot. I think the gunplay was something that stood out to me as the best it was, the best of the game. And as the year has gone by, as the years or so have gone by, well, about a year and a bit now, it's just in this such a confusing place. It's not even a place that I could necessarily pinpoint as being wrong, right, or anything in between. I don't personally enjoy it, but it's just confusing. It's like, if you're going to change the time to kill again, provide the solid reasoning and then stick to your guns, because they started rolling back the time to kill changes in some places and started tweaking it in other places. And then now they've got this weapon which completely conflicts everything that they've said in all of the updates and what they were hoping to achieve. It's like, we're trying to really balance weapons over range, and then all of a sudden, by the way, here's a weapon that will delete anybody up until about 25 meters. It's a very confusing time to be a Battlefield player, and I guess really that's why you've seen more shooters on the channel. Battlefield will always be my go-to. I think when Battlefield is at its best, it is the best. There is nothing else in the market that can beat it. I think Battlefield 3 and 4 for me were special times because there was nothing else like it, and I was sinking hours upon hours into that game. But this is just such a far cry from those days now. And I still have faith in Battlefield 5. I still think they can produce something good, and I still think something good can come of it. But more and more as time goes on, there are just so many of these questionable decisions that make me wonder why people still play. It's frustrating. You know, Battlefield 5, we're talking about a game that had a Royale mode made for it that just got completely stopped. Like, it was handed over to DICE. DICE went, ooh, here's a Battle Royale mode that Criterion have gave us. Well, guess we won't try with that, and now that's gone. A huge asset of potential to potentially bringing loads of people into the game, a huge asset in terms of potentially bringing Battlefield to a much wider audience, binned off, various different time to kill changes that some made sense, some didn't make sense. I think the most recent one did make sense, but execution has been questionable, and now they're trying to rejig things. And then you've got just statistical anomalies like anti-material rifles, 1,000 RPM weapons, and MMGs. You know, it feels as though there isn't a core philosophy at the moment for Battlefield, and I think that's really shining through. And it's a hideous shame when so many of the most recent updates have been fantastic. You know, if you take away the time to kill controversy, the updates surrounding Battlefield 5, other than that, have been really good. You know, they've rebalanced tanks and actually made them a viable option in the game. They kind of made it less OP to be in a plane, which was great. And then all of a sudden this comes along and it's like, well, all of that good direction we were taking, how about we do a U-turn? And it's frustrating. I mean, you know, the kill feed at the intro speaks for itself. People who perhaps are in the know about Battlefield 5 already went to the high rate of fire weapons, and because enough people who pay enough attention decided to use high rate of fire weapons and high damage weapons, all the blueberries who are constantly getting rinsed by them, like Swomies and Type 2As, they're like, well, I seem to be dying to these weapons a lot, and it doesn't take long for just an average Joe kind of plays Battlefield every once in a while to realize that they're being killed by the same weapon over and over again. And especially in the case of the Type 2A, there's nothing, it is the only gun worth using. And, you know, it just doesn't make sense. But anywho, I feel like that's my kind of hashtag rant over. I'm never going to use a hashtag like that again because it's a little bit damp, but for the most part, I think people understand where I'm coming from just because there's just so many questionable what in the hell's going on happening. And I really hope we see some positive updates soon for the most part. And I don't like making negative content, but it's like, what else can you do when things like this happen? Anywho, folks, thank you for watching. Been me, TheTacticalBrit. I'll catch you again soon in another video.